We are live on YouTube, and before we begin, I'll just read the emergency response plan.
Thank you.
So in an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery take direction from security to evacuate. Council takes direction from the meeting clerk to evacuate. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell. Take the stairs to ground level and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or the meeting clerk during an evacuation. Finally, please speak with security or the meeting clerk if you require first aid. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Call the meeting to order with a land acknowledgement that we are meeting today on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Region 4 homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. So roll call. Do we have Councillor Wright?
Good morning.
Councillor Knack?
Good morning.
And Councillor Rice?
Good morning.
Excellent. Welcome. Adoption of the agenda. Take a motion to approve the agenda with one following change. Item 10.1, row housing design analysis, RS zone.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any questions? Any debate? And Mayor Sohi has joined us as well. Welcome, Mayor Sohi. I'll call the vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. Okay, approval of the minutes, the January 21st, 2025 Urban Planning Committee.
So moved.
Councillor Wright. Any questions, edits, deletions? Hearing none, call the vote.
We have all the votes.
Great, please display the vote. Protocol items, I'm not aware of any. Select items for debate. Would folks want to select anything for debate? I will select, Councillor Wright. No? Okay, I'll select 7.1. We've got speakers on that item. Any other items for selection? Oh, Councillor Knack. Oh, pardon me. Councillor Knack, would you like to select 7.1?
If you don't mind, I'd love to. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Knack has
Yes.
selected item 7.1. Seeing no other selections, then we'll move to vote on reports not selected for debate.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Any questions? Debate? Please call the vote.
We have all the votes.
Excellent, thank you. Requests to speak.
Would you like me to read out what
Oh, yes,
committee just
please,
passed?
please do.
Thank you. So this morning, Urban Planning Committee has passed the recommendations of the following reports without debate. Item 7.2, 18th Street over Horse Hills Creek Bridge Replacement Environmental Impact Assessment, and 7.3, Garapi Neighborhood Renewal Environmental Impact Assessment and Site Location Study.
Okay. Great, well, requests to speak. Clerk, could you assist me with the names?
Councillor Jans, can I
Oh,
move
thanks.
that the Urban Planning Committee hear from the following speakers and panels where appropriate for item 7.1, Valley Line West 2025, roadway construction options and impacts. Todd Janes, Stony Plain Road and Area Business Improvement Area. Marion Switzer, Stuart Fraser, Naop and Cantero, Paul Faraday, Cantero, and Percy Weirdo.
Excellent, thank you. Take a motion to, well, that motion is approved by Councillor, or proposed by Councillor Wright. Are there any changes, additions, deletions? Hearing none, then let's call the vote on approving those folks to speak.
Yes.
Excellent. There are
Thank
no
you, Councillor Rice.
There are no time-specific items on the agenda.
We are still voting. We have all the votes.
Oh, yeah, please display the vote. That is carried unanimously. Great. Not aware of any time-specific items for the agenda. Councillor inquiries, reports to be dealt with a different meeting or reschedules or unfinished business. So that brings us to report 7.1. So does administration have a presentation?
We do.
Please proceed.
Great, thank you very much. And good morning, committee members. I'm Bruce Ferguson, Branch Manager for LRT Expansion and Renewal. Joining me in person today is Brian Latta, Director of Valley Line. And virtually, we have Po Sun, our Technical Manager for the Valley Line Project, and Sarah Maid, our Director of Communications and Engagement. We're here today in response to a motion made on October 22nd, 2024, about the steps that need to be taken to ensure the vast majority of road construction work on Valley Line West is finished by the end of this year's construction season. I'll pass it over to Brian Latta, who will present the slides and our proposed strategy.
Thanks, Bruce. I'd just like to start with a real brief recap of the Valley Line project. The Valley Line project is valued at $2.6 billion, which is the city's largest infrastructure project ever undertaken. It runs 14 kilometers from the downtown to Lewis Farms in West Edmonton. There will be 14 street-level stops and 2 elevated stations, 2 new bridges, one over Grote Road, which was just recently opened in November of last year, and an LRT bridge over the Anthony Henday Drive. There's also an elevated guideway along 87th Avenue, 2 new maintenance and storage facilities, the Jerry Wright Operations and Maintenance Facility, and the Lewis Farms Storage Facility. All these components are well underway and taking shape. Finally, there are 46 new LRT vehicles on order, the first of which are scheduled to arrive in June of this year. Next slide, please. When city construction projects require traffic restrictions, many city departments work together in the planning phase. This involves staff from the Traffic Operations Group, Eminent Transit, Fire Rescue Service, and our department colleagues in IAS who are managing other nearby city construction projects. By having everyone at the table, it ensures a coordinated approach that balances traffic flow with various project and stakeholder needs. As part of this planning process, access for emergency vehicles and first responders remain top of mind, as is any potential impacts to businesses and communities. Traffic modeling is done to understand how traffic may divert to avoid the construction area and what traffic control changes might be necessary along those routes to accommodate the diverted traffic. Other concurrent roadway projects are included in the modeling scenario. On February 25th, administration will also be presenting to City Council a traffic management report that provides more detail on how these projects are planned and their impacts mitigated, with an overview of citywide projects planned for 2025. Next slide. The existing Valley Line West project agreement between the city and Marigold outlines a number of traffic requirements the contractor must adhere to. The requirements aim to strike a balance between traffic flow and having sufficient space for the construction crews and workers to work safely. They limit the amount of traffic impact at signalized intersections, especially during peak hours. In addition, full road intersection closures can only occur if other similar nearby roadways are available for diverted traffic. Overall, this results in longer construction timelines and extended traffic impacts. To accommodate the accelerated work plan, some requirements of this project agreement would need to be modified. This would be covered through a separate written agreement between the city and Marigold. This slide shows a typical reconstruction of a full intersection as currently contemplated in the project agreement. As can be seen, the roadway and construction zone needs to shift multiple times. Depending on the traffic needs, turning movements, and pedestrian crossings, the reconstruction of a full intersection often requires 4 to 6 construction stages. This year, Marigold Infrastructure Partners will be starting their 4th year of this major construction project. With the favorable and significant construction progress that occurred in 2024, the goal in 2025 would be to maintain this momentum and complete the majority of roadwork and track work in key areas. This would result in many of the roads being in their final configuration sooner than originally anticipated. This accelerated work plan is ambitious, but it would reduce the overall time frame of the traffic restrictions through key intersections by more than 1/2. The trade-off, however, is that some commuters would need to travel more out of their way for a period of time, and access to business areas would be less direct. Now, moving into a bit more detail on how this accelerated work plan was developed and what it would look like. Since late 2024, administration and Marigold have been working closely to lay out an accelerated road work plan. The plan would involve 3 major intersection phases from April to November. Marigold crews would work extended hours at key intersections, likely 2 10-hour shifts 7 days a week. Dedicated crews would be assigned to gain efficiencies where possible. A robust public communication plan would be developed to proactively inform commuters, residents, and businesses about upcoming traffic restrictions, access impacts, and alternative routes. Certain requirements of the project agreement would need to be adjusted, but overall, the goal is to have the vast majority of roads along the alignment in their final configuration quicker and set the project up for a final push in 2026 to complete all of the rail work. This slide shows the 11-kilometer Valley Line West alignment with key locations from the report color-coded. Phase 1 of the accelerated plan would occur from April to July and would involve traffic restrictions at 3 intersections shown by the blue dots. There would be a full closure at Stony Plain Road and 124th Street, and partial closures at the intersections of Stony Plain Road at 156th Street and 87th Avenue at Meadowlark Road. The orange dots representing Phase 2 would take place from July to September, with the affected intersections being Stony Plain Road at 142th Street and the intersection of 95th Avenue and 156th Street. Both of these would be partial closures. The third and final phase is shown by the green dot and would take place from September to November. This would be the partial closure at the intersection of Stony Plain Road and 149th Street. The red line is 104 Avenue, which would be restricted to 1 lane in each direction from 106th Street to 121st Street, with the additional turn lanes at key intersections. This restriction would be in place the entire construction season. The light blue line shows additional roadway segments that will be completed in 2025. The map also shows other important city construction projects near the Valley Line West, noted in yellow, which are, first, the Imagine Jasper project, which in 2025 will include reconstruction of the section from 114th Street to 117th Street, 95th Avenue from 163rd to 178th Street, which involves, again, reconstruction and installation of active transportation, and the Wellington Bridge replacement project along 102 Avenue. Wellington Bridge would not be closed until after the work is completed at Stony Plain Road and 142 Street, and this work has been sequenced intentionally. Finally, the low-level bridge work is also noted on the map. However, this work is expected to have little overlapping traffic impacts with the Valley Line West construction. And finally, the 2 purple lines on the map are the 2 sections of road that would not be completed in 2025 and would continue into 2026. However, Marigold has indicated that where possible, they will try to deploy crews to 87th Avenue to try and accelerate that work. Next slide. This map shows an example of how a partial closure would look like at one of the intersections. The partial closure shown in purple would allow for some movements, like those shown in green, to continue. In the example here, Stony Plain Road and 142 Street, the majority traffic movements such as the northbound to eastbound right turn and the westbound to southbound left turn would continue to be available. 142 Street through traffic would be encouraged to use 149 Street, which will remain open with full north-south capacity. This table summarized the duration impacts by undertaking the work through the accelerated work plan. This is probably the most impactful slide in the presentation. Each major intersection is listed with estimated construction durations under both the accelerated and the contract stipulated methodologies. While administration acknowledges that work undertaken using the accelerated plan comes with considerable inconveniences, the potential time differences are compelling. To monitor progress and schedule, administration intends to have weekly progress meetings with Marigold and undertake a detailed review of the progress after each major phase to ensure the subsequent phase can be completed within the expected timelines. The teams also paid close attention to understanding and mapping out potential shortcut paths around these intersection closures. It was concluded that there are actually limited shortcutting opportunities for motorists, as many of the possible shortcutting paths are also cut off due to local street closures with the Valley Line construction. Nevertheless, designated and signed detours would be in place and encouraged. A robust communication plan and stakeholder outreach plan would also be a priority. Marigold and the city have already met a number of times to outline how such a plan would be implemented. Some of the tactics could include on-site road signage, business wayfinding signage, stakeholder outreach and public notice. And it's also worth noting that we've already been reaching out to a number of stakeholders and businesses over the past couple of weeks, letting them know about this report and the discussion that would happen at committee today. As expected, we have received some early feedback, primarily from businesses near 142 and 149th Street intersections. Early comments pertain to the reduced access for businesses, which is compounding the many years of construction they've already experienced, and some lack of confidence that Marigold will complete the work in the time they have stated. Other communication tactics would include media events and interviews, social media posts, and using the city's website along with Marigold's to post traffic impact information and alternative routes. To summarize, Marigold has made good progress in 2024, and we want to build on that momentum and have another successful year in 2025. It's the success of 24 that has generated the optimism that they will perform as they have promised. With the accelerated plan, the majority of the roadwork in key areas would be completed in 2025. Some roadwork would continue into 2026, such as along 102 Avenue in the downtown, and along 87th Avenue beneath the elevated guideways. Intermittent short-term lane closure would also be needed in future years, but the majority of roadwork would be finished. The accelerated plan would significantly reduce the overall timeline of traffic restrictions and also relieve some of the pressure on track work scheduled for 2026. This is not a plan to shorten the overall project schedule, but to de-risk some of the most complex civil construction elements, that being through those major intersections. However, we don't want to ignore that an accelerated plan will be more disruptive in the short term for commuters, residents, and businesses. Overall, we believe the benefits of an accelerated plan outweigh the drawbacks. We have an opportunity to really push the project forward this year in a meaningful way and set things up well for subsequent years. Unless we hear otherwise from committee, administration will work with Marigold to advance this accelerated plan and begin the design of the detailed traffic restrictions and associated communication tactics, as well as negotiate the terms under which these traffic restrictions will be undertaken. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions after the committee has heard from today's speakers.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Next, we'll go to speakers from the public. If I may, I believe we might have a couple in person, so I'll ask if you can come to the clerk. We will assist you in finding the right mic. Todd Janes, Stony Plain Road and Area Business Improvement Area. Marianne Switzer, remote. Stuart Fraser, in person. Yep. And Paul Faraday, remote. And Percy Wiridu, remote. So if I could invite the guests in person to come to follow the clerk there. To come on down. I believe I have guest Janes first whenever you're. All right, when you want to proceed, just a reminder to talk close to the red mic, please. You'll have 5 minutes.
Good morning, committee members and your worship. I'm pleased to speak towards this motion today. The Stony Plain Road Business Association represents 550 businesses within our business improvement area between 140th and 170th Street. To say that our businesses have been adversely impacted by this construction of a major infrastructure project is incredibly apparent. However, as Mr. Latte said earlier, we are looking hopefully at the future after we saw considerable improvements along Stony Plain Road between 149 and 156th Street this summer. We do have deep reservations about this being able to be presented, and as I said, we are encouraged by this, and we are a bit flummoxed that it actually took 3 years for this type of schedule, accelerated schedule, to be proposed in this area. We would ask several things of administration, specifically of the urban committee around this, in that a more robust communication plan, including signage and wayfinding, with a minimum of 2 weeks in advance to inform businesses, customers, and commuters and drivers in advance of closures and disruptions. An articulated strategy with the city and MIP if timelines are not met by MIP, and if they project a further delay in meeting timelines, this needs to be communicated to businesses and property owners as soon as possible, not post-deadline. We would also ask, with the current agreement under the P3 model, it seems that the City of Edmonton has very limited abilities to enforce and adherence to timelines, and we would ask for strategies or tools to address if the timelines set by MIP are not met through additional support to businesses to fund or support additional programming. 4, specific traffic impact reports. I heard today that those are forthcoming for each intersection area and the adjacent neighborhoods that will be impacted by detours, traffic cutting, shortcutting. 5, that no new intersection acceleration begin before the previous intersections are completed and traffic flow is returned to what will be permanent. And finally, 6, that the Stony Plain Road Business Association be recognized as the established method of engagement with and through our businesses between 140th and 157th Street along the Stony Plain corridor. This has been a difficult project for our businesses and our surrounding communities. I do believe that every person involved in this project has the best of intentions. However, we have seen significant delays and missteps in this project. Certainly a project of this magnitude, we would expect that there be greater foresight and planning around things such as inclement weather, supply chain, staffing results, and we are encouraged that MIP and the City of Edmonton are working towards an accelerated plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Marion Switzer, remote.
Hi, my name is Marion Switzer, and I am the owner of the Gilded Rabbit, which is located on the northwest corner of Stony Plain Road and 149th Street. So it will be a business that's going to be significantly impacted during the phase 3 of this proposed plan. Last Monday, I received an email from Wade Wilson at Reverb Communications inviting me to a meeting on Tuesday that unfortunately I wasn't able to attend just because of the short notice. I already had another appointment scheduled, but I have had a chance to take a look at the proposal on the city's website as long as the attachments with it. At the time, my initial feelings towards the intersection closures were mainly positive. I'm sure I could speak to most of the business owners along this stretch, is that we're ready for the construction to be over. It's been a lot. It's been COVID, construction, inflation, possible looming tariffs coming from the States. So it's been a difficult time. And so the faster this can get done, obviously the better. With that being said, there are a couple of concerns that I do have. The first one being our parking lot, and I have included some attachments. I don't know if everybody's got them in front of them or if they're posted anywhere up at the meeting in person. But there is, the first image shows our parking lot, which is quite narrow and has enough space for cars to move through in one direction only. All of our deliveries are done through our front doors, and delivery trucks need to be able to access, to be able to move through the parking lot. So if they're entering through the south side entrance, they need to be able to exit out of the east-facing exits, and then vice versa. Last December, Marigold had closed our south-facing intersection, or south-facing entrance for about a week, and it caused chaos. Delivery trucks weren't able to go through, so they were needing to back out through the parking lot onto the street, which also required cars coming in behind them to also back out into the street. If two delivery trucks were in there, they would have to wait for the first one to leave before the other one could. It caused a lot of chaos. And there is also the extra, I guess, sort of barrier with the digital sign that has been installed in our parking lot too. In image 2, you can see how much it overhangs in our parking lot, and it is not tall enough for trucks to fit underneath, unfortunately. So that does cause another barrier. I had spoken to a couple of people at Marigold, as well as Andrew Knack, saying that I would be open to there being maybe a temporary exit that trucks could get in and out of, maybe further up on the east side. Again, the digital sign does create a bit of a barrier there, but the main point being, if there aren't enough exits for our trucks to get in and out of, we're not going to be able to receive any deliveries. Our back doors also don't really allow for deliveries. They're too narrow for us to get a skid through. There's no buzzers, there's no peepholes for safety reasons. A lot of us work solely by ourselves a lot of the time. So there's just not the ability to leave the front of the store to go back and receive a delivery through the back door. My second concern would, of course, be the loss of customers that could potentially be involved with closing this intersection or temporarily closing it. Signage is always, I think, a bit of an issue. I think sometimes there are too many signs and drivers just get blind to seeing them all of the time. So with the intersection last year, signage was up saying that you can't turn in certain areas, or that you have to be in a certain lane to go in a certain direction. Nobody obeyed them. So that is another concern for cars still coming down and trying to turn around in our parking lot once they realize that the intersection is closed. With that being said, I think there's still too many unknowns. I would like to see if Marigold is able to come up with a solution for our parking lot. That would be my biggest concern. We still need to be able to get deliveries. The timing for my phase 2, phase 3 also hits us at a really inconvenient time. September to December is our busiest time of the store. It's where we make half of our money for the year. That's what keeps us going through the summer. So unfortunately, the timing for that is also unfortunate for us. So with all that being said, I don't know if I'm pro or against the closing of the intersection. I would like to see, I guess, some further information on how the parking lot's going to be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Guest Fraser.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Could you bring the mic a little closer, please?
It's hard, like the countdown on
Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Guest Switzer, if you could mute, please. Thanks.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today to Urban Planning Committee. My name is Stuart Fraser. I'm Vice President for Cantiro Group. We are the owners of West Block Lenora at 142nd Street and Stony Plain Road. In addition, I'm a board member for NAOP Edmonton and chair of the Advocacy Committee. The reason I'm speaking to you today is to raise considerable concerns with proposed closure to north-south movements at the 142nd Street intersection. It's my understanding that Council directed Marigold and administration to consider alternatives to the current construction schedule for the West LRT. It's also my understanding that there is general community support for the acceleration of this work. They would like to trade increased disruption to significantly decrease the duration of construction. So we want to be an ally on this. And when I say we, I say that wearing both my Cantiro and NAOP hats. We are 100% on board with figuring out solutions to accelerate the work. In fact, I stood before Executive Committee just before Christmas discussing the impacts that prolonged construction has had on local businesses in this area. There's a real opportunity here to frame this as a win for council, administration, the community, and businesses. So I don't want to come across as dramatic. However, I'm here to explain to you that there's an existential crisis that this proposed plan has on the local businesses along Stony Plain Road. The crux of the issue is that the plan completely cuts off access from all neighborhoods to the south, as well as all traffic from both westbound and downtown, westbound from downtown and eastbound into downtown. We are supportive of an accelerated plan, but we are requesting a hard stop to the current proposal. As designed, there is a very real risk that it will put out of business a number of our tenants. A few of those businesses are here today and are speakers, and they will provide further details. I really want to drive home the point that all these businesses have significant fixed costs. We need to work in a partnership to ensure that revenue continues to flow in. They need to continue paying their employees and service their loans. This is not possible with limiting traffic to just the north of Stony Plain Road. Also, what guarantees do we have that this work will be completed in the proposed 9-week timeline? What really irks me about this plan is the blatant disregard for the directly affected stakeholders. We were given notice about the plan early last week with a meeting on Friday. At that meeting, 0 decision makers were present, and we were informed by the comms team that this meeting was solely to inform us of the closure rather than collect any feedback. What's more insulting is that none of the communication staff were present at the actual technical meeting to determine the plan. They informed us that their experts had determined that this was the optimal solution. So my question for this committee and council in general is, why are we only looking at 2 proposed options, the status quo and full disruption? In the half week we had to scramble to respond, we came up with multiple options that accelerated construction while maintaining access to businesses. My colleague Paul Faraday will be presenting some of these shortly. This proposal is 100% an engineering solution with 0 regard for the fabric of the community. Life shouldn't operate like this. Nuance is key. Off the top of my head, what does it look like to use 2 10-hour shifts under the old plan? Does this truncate the work to 14 weeks? What about full closures after business hours? What about providing full access via 143rd? These are just some of the options that we are looking at. I implore this community to work with us to come up with a common sense solution. We are here to advocate and frame this as a win. Please don't pass this plan without significant changes. We are willing and able to work rapidly for a much more palatable solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Guest Faraday.
All right, thank you. So Paul Faraday, also with Cantero, Executive Vice President of Multifamily. Thank you. I did send an attachment in. I guess if we can put that up, that would be great. Thank you very much. Stuart Frazier from our group obviously just spoke, but I wanted to reiterate the same comments that again, we were given very short notice on this, no consultation. So we are again trying to put together a plan to not fully cut off West Block from Stony Plain Road. It is key. A 9-week shutdown for this will decimate the businesses that are in place. We looked at 3 different options. We had a quick meeting yesterday. Thank you, Poe, for pulling together that meeting, much appreciated. With one of the or a couple of the Marigold staff as well. Again, in general, we are 100% in favor of an accelerated construction program. It has been a big deterrent, a big struggle for the tenants and the businesses and the residents that live in West Block during the process that it has been right now with the physical barriers in place. So we're on board with that, but it has to be if there's a shutdown of 142nd and Stony Plain Road, so all northbound traffic is shut off, there needs to be access provided that's intuitive and simple for the visitors of West Block, so that businesses can stay successful. One of the options, if you can go to option 2, please, on that sheet. So in this scenario we're looking at, so there's a current dead end on 140th Street, which is east of West Block. I think there's an opportunity where that road can be opened up, provided access. The majority of the visitors that come through West Block come from the south up 142nd, or either traveling east or west on Stony Plain Road and then turning north into the site. So providing that easy access where it's intuitive to get into the space, it's very, very key for the longevity of the business that operate in here. And again, the 9-week shutdown, total shutdown is would, again, as Stu Fraser mentioned, it's would shut down a lot of these businesses. So we've put it forth that we would, again, happy to meet on site with Marigold, with the city staff, to provide some options where we can do some traffic flow into the site, opportunity even to enter into our east parking lot that you can see right there. We have the kind of a band of blue. Again, we're willing to work with this and try and collaborate and find a solution that works for everybody. But it is key. Currently in the plan that's been proposed, there's no discussion on traffic. It's basically a full stop of traffic flowing north for 9 weeks. Again, from July to September, that is the key to a lot of these businesses. If it's patio seasons for the restaurants, for the coffee shops, the clothing stores, foot traffic. A lot of the people that come here, it is by vehicle. There are a few that come by foot, but a majority of are by vehicle. So providing access makes a lot of sense. But it is key that we need to be a part of this discussion. We were basically just informed rather than consulted through this process. So very frustrating. We've been at the table for a number of years. When the LRT was first brought up and was going to be brought forward, we were part of those discussions and that we were going to be building this first. And we're, again, very in favor of the LRT being in place. Understand there'll be headaches along the way, but we need to be consulted so that we can ensure that when the barriers do come down, that the businesses are still there, that it makes West Block as special as it is. So we'd like to request that the City of Edmonton staff that are working on the LRT, as well as Marigold, meet on site, walk through some options, and actually we'd like a say at the table, not just be informed of what's going to happen, because the businesses are the fabric for this development, for this community, and we need to find a way to make sure that they survive this and thrive. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Guest Wiredu? If you could help with that pronunciation, pardon me.
It's Percy Wiredu.
Wiredu. Okay, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Percy Wiredu. I own El Corazon on the corner of Stony Plain Road and 142nd Street, located in the West Block. We recently got notice of a proposal to shut down the intersection of 142nd Street and Stony Plain Road in hopes of expediting the construction. This is only one of the intersection closures that will impact our area and business. Although we can all agree that the construction needs to be expedited, closing down major intersection is not the answer. There are over 400 employees and thousands of patrons that use 142nd Street to access the West Block. Road closure on 142nd Street would see job losses, significant reduction in traffic to the businesses, which ultimately would lead to business closures. All of our businesses have been significantly impacted since the start of the project, and it is disheartening to be discussing accommodating an accelerated work plan without discussing any considerations or accommodations needed to be made to support the people that live, work, and own businesses in the intersection closure areas. I, along with thousands of others, live in the proposed closure impact areas. While an expedited plan would support a sooner reduction in and high traffic impact, a closure is not the answer. There is construction in many of the roads and areas around the proposed closure areas, which currently impact traffic greatly. Closures will hinder further access to our area and keep the traffic limited to local area. Businesses rely on city traffic. Employees will change their place of work if their access to their workplace is highly impacted. People will refrain from leaving their houses, participating in activities, meeting with friends and family due to the access. The benefits of the proposed closure plan do not outweigh the negative impacts that will be made on the businesses. Like many other business owners in the area, our business has been significantly impacted since the start of this construction project. We have, like many others, rolled up our sleeves, kept people engaged, kept our staff employed, worked hard to keep a pulse in our business despite the massive reduction of traffic and easy access to our businesses. We have already seen a major negative impact on our revenue due to the traffic the last 2 years. Closing these intersections may be the final blow to our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Now go to questions of the speakers. Councillor Knack.
Thanks, Councillor Jansen, and thanks to all our speakers. I spoke with a bunch of them before this meeting, so I don't have many questions. Mr. Weirdo, just to check, Mr. Faraday just presented some additional options. I want to just get your take. Are you suggesting even if one of the options that Mr. Faraday presented, you wouldn't want to go down that route?
I think what Mr. Faraday presented was access to the West Block, right? So as long as there's access maintained, we're fully on board. What we're not on board is just a full closure of that intersection.
Perfect. That's helpful. Thank you. Mr. Faraday, just want to double check. You mentioned you had that meeting yesterday. Obviously, my main questions are for administration, so I'll focus that on them. But what did you hear from Marigold yesterday? Was there openness, or was it more this is what we're doing?
There was they basically had the person we were speaking to had just come back from holidays. They had just reviewed the proposed options basically an hour before the meetings. They hadn't had a chance to do a detailed review of it. They were going to review and get back to us. I had mentioned that time is of the essence. We need to get something within a week to get involved on this. So they're reviewing it, and then we're going to have a follow-up meeting. So.
Okay, great. So, and I'll ask administration. We gave them advance notice about this conversation. So, yeah, I mean, to me, if there's a way to do one of the options you've addressed, and to Ms. Switzer as well, I think let's see if we can do those accommodations so that everyone still has sort of the best case scenario, and we can speed it up. Okay, great. Those are all my questions. I'll have more for admin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rice. Councillor Rice.
Thank you for all the speakers. So I heard a few concerns here, and why I want to ask those questions, and because the construction impact on business, and right now is become seems more significant. Specifically gives a different LRT project in the city. I do want to get sense and from you, and then how we can find a solution together to really not only engineer a solution, and at the same time, and then to make sure the business will still can be functioning, running, and be successful. So I'm going to Speaker Todd James. Mr. James, so you talk about the timeline and regarding the notice received. I know, and you represent that business improvement area. From your perspective, what is the proper timeline and for the business to receive such type of notice?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Rice. We are proposing a minimum of 2 weeks prior to that. Our opinion all the way through this project is then that entrepreneurs and business owners, property managers are smart people, and they will make the best choices for their business and their consumer base given adequate notice. So we've certainly learned that in construction, lots of things can be subject to radical change, but it's essential that that businesses and property owners are given as much advance notice as possible. I think when history has shown that when there are delays with Marigold, that isn't communicated in a timely way, and that is unfortunate. So I would say a minimum of 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you for that. So my next question, I would like to go to Mr. Fraser or Mr. Friday. And so I do heard very clear from you and the willing to work with project team and to find the proper solution. So from decision-making process, what I heard, I just want to make sure I understand property, and you are saying here is about, so the three options you would like to not look at those three options and then instead and willing to have more consultation, more communication to find a different way to reduce the impact on the business. So is that the understanding?
Yeah, so just to reframe this, we're, again, very supportive of accelerating the work. Our issues are with notification being one of them. The second is ensuring that notification and the subsequent workshop that we have yields results. So we need decision makers at these meetings, and we need to work from first principles. So looking through what are the major impacts? We're all working towards accelerating this project. That is a given, but just to be presented with one option isn't acceptable. So that's why we're here today, is that we've provided three alternatives. I'm not fully sure that these are the optimal solutions. We've only had a few days to work through this, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit more on that as well. So we do have regular meetings with Marigold in the city. I believe it's on a bi-weekly or monthly basis. Our team does attend every single time. Nothing was brought up during these regular meetings, and it was just basically informed to us. We just got the notification, as Mr. Fraser mentioned, ahead of about a week ahead of this meeting. So that's the struggle we've had. Is again, we're available. We've always been open. But it's just the consultation is not happening, and it's that's the part that we need to be part of. And again, we're open. We're willing to kind of work with the team on this, but we need to be at the table. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And then time is up. I have more questions to administrations.
Thank you, Councilor Rice. Mayor Sohi.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm going to start with Speaker Fraser. You presented to us a number of months ago, and you at that time said that you need decision makers on the table when you sit down with them. And I'm hearing again that you don't have decision makers at the table. And that is frustrating. I hope that administration heard at that time. I'm hearing that again. I'm going to ask that question together. That is unacceptable. That when they meet with you, they can't make a decision. So I am sorry that is happening again, right? So I understand that you support the accelerated approach, but my worry, and I'll go to this to Jane's, that accelerated approach doesn't drive. The businesses have struggled a lot because of this project and other projects too, right? But I hope what I'm hearing is that accelerated approach may actually do more irreparable harm to some businesses and drive them out of business. Is that a real fear?
I think, okay, well, there's nuance in everything.
Yeah.
So, as proposed, there's a very real risk that our tenants at West Block, we will have a few of them go dark over this. A 9-week period with significantly reduced revenues off of an already reduced baseline because of the disruption could be the last straw for them. So I am very worried about that. That's why we're here to figure out a solution of accelerating it, but allowing some sort of nuance that allows traffic
Right.
into it.
And to you, Speaker James, what are you hearing from your businesses that if this approach is taken, how severe the impact is going to be, and what can be done to mitigate if this accelerated approach is implemented.
Well, Mayor, so this is not the first time our association has communicated this to council.
Yeah.
You know, such is the way of Edmonton as a northern city. The ultimate construction time is also the ultimate time where people go to restaurants and patios and walk in our district and shop more. So there's a collusion with that.
Doing this during summer months is an added concern.
I think Marigold has struggled in certain areas of Stony Plain Road to do basic work like pouring sidewalks and placing tree wells and things, but they're also able to build beautiful things, a bridge over Grote Road on or ahead of schedule, an elevated roadway by Misericordia and West Edmonton Mall. So they do have the capacity. Is just I'm not sure if the will is always there or something along that. So there's a big issue of reputation. There's a big issue of trust. Our businesses are asked once again to bear down and bite hard on a stick as they deal with short-term pain for the greater city. And yet our area has received zero in terms of compensation. For that. Other areas, downtown is constantly getting funds to help them revitalize or reboost. We've seen it in Chinatown as well. Why is West Central Edmonton not on the radar for the city of Edmonton?
Yeah, I know we allocated some resources in the last budget, right, for BIAs. I hope they'll help you a bit. It's not a huge amount of money.
Well, those are for
more of
additional services,
Yes.
Mayor. So they're not specifically any type of triage or financial
Got it. Yeah.
support specifically for a project that is being created and done by the city of Edmonton.
Yeah, so I'm hearing apprehension about timelines, right? That timelines may not be abided by, and what is the mitigation on that? So we definitely will raise those concerns, and again, it's very frustrating, and I apologize for. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. If we can pause for a minute, I have a protocol item. Would like to welcome these students, the grade 6 students from Good Shepherd School. Give us a wave. Yeah, and they're led here by teacher Miller, and they're from Ward Sipiwinawak, who I believe your counselor is Counselor Hamilton, who may be watching us from the screens today. So let's give the screens a wave and say hi to your Counselor Hamilton. Welcome, and Mayor Sohi, do you want to say anything to the students?
You want me to? Hi, kids. How are you? Are you having fun? Usually when kids come to City Hall School, they have their mock console. Are you doing a mock console too? You are? Have you selected your class mayor? Can I ask your worship to come down to the podium? Mayor, come down to the podium. Yay. Tell us your name, and then also what are you going to be talking about? Just walk up to the podium there. Tell us your name.
Megan,
Megan, what are you going to be talking about as part of your mock console?
a curfew bylaw
A curfew bylaw for everyone?
for people under 18 years old.
Oh, people under the age of 18. You want to restrict them to be going out in the, like what time will curfew will start?
From 1 to 6 a.m.
From 1 to 6 a.m. Well, I hope that they're sleeping at that time instead of being out. Well, some have to work depending on the age, right? So, yeah, cool. Well, let us know what you decide, okay? Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Thank you, students. Thank you for coming, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. We're talking about building trains in the West End and road closures and how to minimize the consequences of that much construction and challenges. So stay tuned for more discussion. I believe Councillor Wright, you had questions for.
Thank you. Mr. Janes, near the end of your presentation or your comments, you asked that the BIA be the one to sort of speak for the businesses. Makes sense to me. But so then I'm wondering, so are you working with Mr. Fraser and Mr. Faraday? Because that's still part of the BIA, isn't it?
It sure is. It's a area we're really proud of.
Okay, awesome. So you're working in collaboration, consultation, good example for maybe how our city should be working with you as well?
The comments made by Mr. Fraser around who the decision makers around the table, I would say 95% of our work is done through stakeholder engagement and communications, and they do good work, but everything gets bottlenecked. So communications and things are frustrating. I think Jennifer Sheehan does a great job, and she must have a lot of work to do.
Awesome, thank you. Who represents the neighbors or the community that might be impacted by some of the detours that are being suggested from both sides?
I would imagine part of that is the great system that the City of Edmonton has in the Federation of Community Leagues. Within this proposed area, I think it affects probably about 20 community leagues in that area. Certainly, I don't know why, but many community residents feel really open about contacting the BIA, and we try to provide them the information we can and then redirect them. Certainly, Marigold will love this, but we always encourage people to sign up for the Marigold construction bulletins as well.
Okay, but that's not within the BIA's mandate, is to represent the residents,
No.
right? Okay. And I actually heard you on the radio yesterday. You were promoting a site as well for communicating, and it's Rally for the Road?
Rallyfortheroad.com.
So that's another way that you try to...
That was an initiative in collaboration with the City of Edmonton. They provided some money to create the site, and then we're maintaining it with content and other things going forward.
Okay, and some of that you do direct to Marigold if people have questions in that, right?
Yes, yeah, and the Marigold information flows to that site as well.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I had for you. Ms. Switzer, you had talked about the impact of, or potential impacts of the tariffs.
Yes.
Do you have any insight that some of us we're all wondering about?
I mean, just the looming threat of it. Who knows what Trump is going to decide to do on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. He could change his mind at any moment.
Okay, so that's an unknown that...
It's an unknown, yeah.
That remains unknown, okay. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Are there any other questions of our speakers today? If not, thank you very much for coming, and we'll go to questions of administration. And Councillor Knack, you selected this item. Would you like to go first?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came. We'll just go right into questions. To administration, the recommendations by the Stony Plain Road BIA, Mr. Janes, those seem very reasonable. Is there any reason we couldn't do that?
Councillor Knack, Bruce Ferguson here. No, we thought what Mr. James was proposing was reasonable, and we would endeavor to accommodate that.
Perfect, thank you. For 149th Street and Ms. Switzer's comment, I heard from a couple of the other business owners in that strip mall, and I already gave you the heads up. I would ask this question: is there any way to provide that second access to ensure the movement of delivery vehicles, even if it's a sort of new temporary access over a existing right-of-way?
It's something that our team's looking at right now, Councillor Knox, since the issue was raised. So we're hoping we'll be able to accommodate something as well as figure out how we can get the south access open as quickly as possible. But definitely a valid concern, and now that we're aware of it, we're looking into it with MIP.
Okay. So, I mean, I know you're not going to say it's 100% solved, but what I'm hearing, and so tell me otherwise, is that if we say go ahead with this plan, I can expect that you are working on a way to provide both a second access in the temp for the delivery vehicles and then trying to finish the south access point as quickly as possible within that 7 to 9 weeks to maybe get that open. That's what I've heard. Is that a fair understanding?
So Councillor Knox, certainly we are looking at what can be done to minimize or accelerate that south access work. That's absolutely something that we're thinking about and going to look at in detail. We're going to try to sort of look at what are the logistics around a second access point and what would be, what could accommodate their delivery requirements and what other things could be done, perhaps with the unused or closed portion of 142 Street to allow for drop off or delivery. There's a number. Sorry, no, 149th Street.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So there are some things we're going to work with, and the other thing we have to our advantage is the ladder closure, and we have a lot of time to investigate those options.
Right. So that includes driving over existing sidewalk right of way to allow that delivery vehicle. Like there's nothing you need from me or this council or this committee to make an exception like that. And I know we don't want a delivery truck driving over our sidewalks, but at the same time, if that gives them their second access for 7 to 9 weeks, I'm not at all worried about that. And I want to make sure you have the authority and the permission to do that.
Yeah, certainly we will do that, and we'll
Great.
work and advise the property owner and yourself as we progress through that.
I just, so that is a yes, right?
Yes.
Just to be very direct. Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Same question I'm going to ask then for 142nd Street. I've seen 3 options. Maybe those aren't the firm set in stone by Mr. Faraday. I know you haven't gone through everything in full yet, but to me, I am completely content with any one of those 3, or if there's a 4th one that gives them that piece that allows you to make that closure, but find another way in. So I'm going to ask the same question. Is there anything you need from us if we are to go ahead with this accelerated option to allow that to happen, to make sure that they have either that access in option 2, the option 1 where you sort of drive over what is an existing right-of-way in green space, or option 3 is going through the residential piece?
So, Councillor, on that one, it's a little bit more complicated. I think certainly option 2, which is that access to the east parking lot, is something we're again exploring. I think that's a reasonable one to look into. The other 2 that involve a diversion of 142 Street, which essentially keeps the road open, would involve lengthy, construction of the detour road, and it would add time to what would be otherwise placed in the report. So it would be, I would say, a bit more of a substantial deviation than what we're looking at. And there's some, we need to sort of understand if it's even practically possible to build a detour road with the curves and things that would need to be accommodated. I don't want to sort of set expectations to those 2 options, but certainly the parking lot option is a reasonable one.
That's good. I'll just on those other 2, I will say, having spoke with Mr. Faraday, and I'm not a technical expert, you are, as well as him. I understand there are some types of temporary materials, road, maybe it's not a temporary asphalt road. It's I don't know. Councillor Carmel probably knows more, and he's on the board too. Somebody here has some engineering expertise that has something, so I wouldn't want to rule that out, but I'll let others come in, and I might not have any more questions once everyone's gone through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Mayor Sohi.
Yeah. I apologize in advance if I'm unable to temper my frustration, right? But this is frustrating. I'm hearing again from the folks who were here a number of months ago that they wanted decision makers on the table. And I'm hearing again that decision makers are not on the table. What is happening? Why decision makers are not on the table? Then who are the decision makers? Is it us as administration, or is it Marigold?
Mayor Sohi, I think I understand your frustration. I think we need to better understand the expectations when we're meeting with our stakeholders, because we have a variety of interaction points with them all through our communications group as well as through our technical people. But what I think we're not able to provide is someone in a meeting who can make a decision on the spot, which perhaps may be what they're looking for, because every issue affects another issue adjacent to it. So what our teams do, and we do have our technical people in those meetings, especially when they're requested to be there, is hear the concerns and take it back and understand what we're able to do and what we're able to not do and how that might impact other work that's being planned.
So then, let me ask this. If those technical people are there, they might not be able to make a decision on the spot right there, but can you give me a couple of examples where that information from that table led to rapid decision-making after those meetings?
I would have to check in with our team, Mayor Sohi. I don't know specifically, but an example is the meeting that we had with the team at West Block yesterday, and they've created some options, and we're taking those away, and we will look at them.
Mayor Sohi, I think there's certainly this frustration of the recent sort of in the report here before you. We were working literally to the end of last year with Marigold to understand what in fact could be possible with these closures and what would be realistic that fed into the report, recognizing there wasn't any pre-conversation with the stakeholders possible. But as soon as the report was released publicly, we provided at least an outreach to create at least an understanding of what was in these reports, recognizing we're at a point where we're not making firm decisions around accesses or sub-options. This is a bit about the conversation today and what can be done should we advance and move forward with the detour planning. And we can certainly, with their specific opportunities, create the right decision makers and technical people on a go-forward basis.
Would this situation have been different if you, as an administration, as the city administration, had directly overseeing this project instead of going through a middle person, which is Marigold, which is a P3 project? Would the situation be different? Would you be able to respond more fast, rapidly to the concerns of the community instead of going through another layer?
Mayor Sohi, I think the project delivery method doesn't really determine how we're able to engage. We would still need to work with our stakeholders and still need to work with our contractors to find solutions that work within the bounds of our contract.
Okay. But then, what you're proposing today, why would such things not considered when we are actually signing the actual contract? Why is that we take the approach where we don't close all the roads, we keep the roads open for traffic management? Why would such a schedule that is being proposed today would not have been considered 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
When the project agreement was first structured, it was structured to try to balance construction with access and to make sure that people were, both the commuters and citizens were able to move through those areas and at the same time provide enough workspace for Marigold. So it came with trade-offs when we struck the contract to try to balance those trade-offs to the extent that we can. Now that we're halfway through the contract and Marigold has demonstrated good momentum and good progress in 2024, then we're comfortable looking at a different solution to try to get it finished up this year.
Yeah, I understand, but I think what I'm concerned is that for 3 years, businesses have been suffering. Now we're going to ask them to suffer even more. Yes, accelerate the timeline, get it, right? That's what I'm hearing, that, I'll come back maybe for a second round because I'm running out of time.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. Next would be Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I'm just wondering so we've got a couple of business owners or whatever represented here today. Is there any, and they've identified some concerns with their own specific businesses. Has anything been done to do a broader sort of scan on, or to get feedback from other businesses that might be impacted in certain particular ways?
Councillor Wright, we did, shortly after the report was released 10 days ago, reach out to at least a dozen stakeholders and held a variety of meetings. So some of the attendees are here today to reiterate their concerns, but we did meet with other groups, you know, including the Unity Square team, people along Long Street. So we have offered this dialogue. Some have wanted and insisted on more work, which we're committed to doing. Others are just thank you for the information. Please let us know when the more details are available.
So
if this advances.
have any other concerns been identified, like specific to their own business? Like as far as access?
I don't have any other ones that have been brought to my attention, but that's not to say once the more detailed plans that, you know, they would want to have and will have an opportunity to at least see ahead of time what's coming. But these have been the most direct and the most ones that they've identified at this time.
Okay, and I know you've done some traffic impact modeling and that. Any feedback that's been garnered from residents in the area? Like what the impact is going to be on their neighborhoods?
The team has not directly received any of that. I think any kind of feedback has been through just broad sort of awareness around the report, what's been in the media, what, you know, individual conversations have been had. Many people have said, please finish as quickly as you can. And then there's the other perspective about this is a significant restriction, and you heard the comments today.
Okay. And when you're meeting with these groups, they're talking no decision makers at the table, but you do have the technical engineers from both the city and Marigold at the table? Like it's not just communications people saying this is what we're doing?
I'm not at every meeting. I would say there's been times where there are no technical people, and it's been much about awareness, and then sometimes questions get brought up that there's follow-up after the fact. But certainly we're hearing, you know, we want to, the stakeholders want more technical people more often, which we can work with Marigold to see what's possible. You know, they're here today and they're hearing a lot of these comments, so I'm sure they'll reflect and take action as best they can.
Okay. And then the tariffs. What part of the supply chain could be impacted by the potential tariffs? Like, and would it just be costs that would be impacted? Would it cause delays, further delays? Anybody got a crystal ball?
Councillor, I think at this point in time, there's more unknowns than there's known. And right now we have no specific impacts happening because of them. We are aware, and corporately we're doing a review as it relates to contract requirements and elements like that, so we can be aware and ready when they come, but nothing specifically today that would deviate us from the plan you're seeing here.
Okay, and you'd sort of be ramping up your risk mitigation if...
We're doing the appropriate reviews to make sure that we have, as this unfolds, that we're ready for that, yes.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, administration, for all the reports, all the information in front of us. I do have a few follow-up questions here, and then from project management perspective and construction impact perspective as well. So I heard clearly and from speaker, yes, and then they support this accelerate process. So does this accelerate process will ensure our project will finish on schedule, will not have any more delays, or what is specific process here is to finish project on time? Or so can you explain a little bit more on that piece?
So Councillor Rice, as I said in the presentation, this specific initiative isn't necessary to finish early. It's to what we say we want to de-risk some of the most complex parts of the remaining civil construction, and that's the road, the track bed and the rail through the major intersections. So this would allow the entire intersection to be completed and crossed in one piece. You don't deal with joints between the various sections as you construct maybe a quarter of the intersection and then another quarter and then another quarter. So it allows for that work to be completed to ensure the balance of the rail work has a, doesn't result in any sort of delay, or at least you've guarded against, that then becoming a scheduled issue later on. It provides some mitigated risk to the project.
Okay, so I understand that this is a mitigation strategy for some of the risk for the project. Then my question related to this, there are two questions come in. So number one, why those type of mitigation strategy did not identified and 3 years ago and as a traffic requirements and for the project? This is number one. Number two, and for any impact analysis to be done financially and for the business around the project area. So this is what we heard the concern here today. And also, who is decision making and for those type of option and in front of us right now? Is the project team to make a decision, just inform council, or the council needs involved this P3 project model to make a decision, say, we should go this way through the community, or we should go the different way. So can you comment on a little bit more on those, provide some like insights?
Councillor Rice, on the first question, just the building on the mayor's question, when we created the project agreement originally, we did so with a goal of balancing the amount of construction that could be done with also maintaining traffic through intersections, understanding that with that trade-off, the work takes longer and it's more impactful, but traffic does continue to move forward. So that's the way the project agreement was structured. And I think at this point in time, we would continue to structure an agreement like that, as opposed to right out of the gates allowing of wholesale closures of major elements along the alignment. We've been working with Marigold for the last few years, and like I said, we are confident now that they've gained some momentum, they've got their underground work done, they're able to focus on track and road, and so we see this as an opportunity to continue to accelerate that work and try to get the road work completed as quickly as possible.
Okay, so I know there are a few other questions already asked by my colleagues. I look at my notes here. I understand our ward councillor actually tried twice and to support business impact by those construction, and actually I support it. I would like to know, is there any standardized process or is there any other type of sense project has been done to really look at impact on the business and how could minimize that impact in terms of financial impact specifically? And because right now their revenue reduced, their customer reduced, their losing their customers, and all those major construction could impact on the business. And is there any way, because this is not the first time we discuss this, is there any way we could look into it and find a way to address those concerns? I know my time is out. So, Mr. Chair, and you allow the answer, or I can
Thank
come.
you. Nope, we'll go back for a second round.
Okay.
I guess then Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the conversation. So I've had a chance to speak to residents and businesses that have reached out to my office about construction disruption, and a few important questions. So generally high level of support. I think most of the businesses and residents I've spoken to are very supportive of this plan, but there's definitely some nervousness on some of the ways this might play out. So similar to some earlier questions and comments from speakers, could you talk us through, so one suggestion was, right now we're being presented with these two options, business as usual, an accelerated timeline. Is there anything in the middle, which would, let's say, maintain the same lane closures, but have people working overnight. So extending the hours, but not necessarily changing the closure schedule. Was any analysis done on that in terms of the trade-offs there?
So Councillor Stevenson, I'll try and answer that question as best I can, because I wasn't at every one of the conversations. And I'm trying to sort of speak on behalf of MIP here. They've certainly structured this accelerated plan on the basis of a certain methodology that involves a certain number of specialized crews to do the subgrade, the concrete work, and the track work in a very focused period of time. And at very specific intersections, like 2 or 3 at any one stage, and then moving on to the next one. I think perhaps what you're suggesting, if we just sort of worked long hours everywhere, there may not be, those crews would be perhaps stretched out and wouldn't gain the efficiencies that they would otherwise if they were concentrated in one particular spot.
Great. No, that's very helpful. Thanks for providing that explanation. Another concern is just around nighttime disruption. For residents, there are thousands of individuals that would live sort of within acoustic range of some of the work in my ward. So I understand work will be 20 hours a day. Is it possible that there are restrictions on sort of the latest 4 of those hours, so that there's 4 hours where there's no construction at all and 4 hours where there's maybe less disruptive construction, to create kind of a block of 8 hours for people overnight?
I think, Councillor, just to answer your question, I believe so. I think we can, through our agreement with them, our specialized agreement on how this works out, perhaps provide some additional limitations on certain work at certain times a day. And I would hope that that wouldn't create any sort of additional significant time lag. It's a reasonable ask, and I think it's about working with them on a logical sequencing of work and the type of machinery and equipment at certain times of the day.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. And also, in that, I do hear complaints just around the lighting at night. So not directly related to the acceleration, but just something to maybe throw into the mix of how lighting is managed during the night hours. But really appreciate you looking into that, providing that block of time, which won't work for everyone, but I hope at least provides a bit of relief for residents. Another really important consideration is just, this concern that folks have that we get the worst of both worlds, which is the intersections are completely closed and then the timelines extend. Could you talk through some of the mechanisms you have to provide financial incentives, penalties, if those sort of intensive closures don't finish on time?
So, Councillor, now getting into the specifics on what that agreement would look like, we haven't really started negotiations, because we certainly need this report to sort of set that up.
Right.
I think we're looking at a variety of mechanisms to incent them to meet their schedule, and if they don't meet their schedule, there would be some retribution in some way.
Great.
The other thing, again, is the commitment for weekly project status meetings. How did we do last week? Are we still on track? Are we going to target and finish on the date we ask? So that will be a commitment we'll follow through on. And then I think finally, at the end of every phase, or when they may finish a particular intersection and have a crew ready, they would need to have finished in the time that they had promised. We wouldn't necessarily allow them to go to another intersection if there were some legacy issues. Like, all of those things would be part of our decision making throughout the process, and as each one of the phases gets transitioned between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3.
Great. I really appreciate that. I'll come back for another round. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carmel.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the speakers today. I didn't have any questions. I was aware of the concerns there, and we'd had some previous conversations, but I did want to thank them for attending today. Appreciate that. I share Mayor Sohi's frustration, and I maybe stated it a little bit differently. I think that there was an opportunity for conversation to be had about options. including options like, can we take part of your property or part of your parking lot and create a shortcut? And the sense I get is that those weren't the conversations, that the conversations were essentially one-sided communication down and not a conversation around, a series of potential solutions. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's the sense I'm getting in terms of frustration.
Councillor Carmel, I think a lot of that is driven by the amount of time that we had and the amount of time that MIP had to put the plan together. There wasn't a lot of time for back and forth dialogue along the alignment. We were trying to present to committee today based on a motion in October what it would take and what it would look like. We understand there's lots of details that would still need to be worked out as we do detailed planning, but there wasn't the time that we would like to have had to have detailed stakeholder engagement at the same time that Marigold was trying to build the plan.
Yeah, I struggle with that response, to be fair. I pulled this report out Sunday evening. I got my maps out, and I put little squares on the intersections to figure out whether, and then start looking for ways to avoid those interruptions, and taking a more global look. In the ward I represent, there's effectively 3 exits, Whitemud to the west, Whitemud to the east, and 23rd Avenue. 23rd Avenue is compromised at 111th Street by South LRT construction. Whitemud eastbound is compromised by the Snow Valley Bridge reconstruction. And now Whitemud West is compromised by, you can't get there from here with this sequence of projects. I understand that there's a need to find our way through, but I don't see the attention put to the sequencing and the arrangement of these projects. So as I look at the map, the first thing that comes to mind is 104th Avenue is going to be 1 lane each way for the year. Jasper Avenue is going to have some sort of a thing happen to it. When is that scheduled? The Jasper Avenue work.
Jasper Avenue work will begin in 2025, likely Q2 and on. And that will be a restriction to 1 lane each direction as well, as an example.
So Q2 and on means at the same time that the 156th Street intersection is on Stony Plain Road is completely closed, and the Stony Plain Road intersection at 124th Street is completely closed, the 2 main roads that go into downtown will be down to 1 lane each direction. So is there any thought to sequencing that Jasper Avenue work next year when at least something will be done?
I would say, Councillor, we did, you're right, there will be disruption through the overall downtown. We did look at all the projects in connection with all of the capacities we have. And you're right, we've discussed 107 Ave, 111 Ave, River Valley Road. There are other routes, and there will be extra delay from that. But that analysis was done at a broader scale. And we're not indicating there'll be no impact. We understand that, but that was just part of our thought process.
So what would it take to delay the Jasper Avenue work by 1 year to start in 2026? Does that require a motion? Like, is that just a directive motion? Essentially the same question for the work on 95th Avenue. Don't do other stuff until this stuff is done.
I guess, Council, you have discretion to direct us to not do something technically from a governance perspective. My advice would be that we should hear from you, we should take away, and we should bring back impacts and information if you're not happy and content. I wouldn't quite go to specifically telling us to do something like that at an individual project level. We have to look at where we're at from where we're at with tendering commitments made. Like there's implications that we need to make sure we're aware of before I would suggest you do that directly.
Right. Well, that's one consideration. On the diversion road, we have a diversion road in place already at 23rd Avenue and 111th Street. We have a second one in place already at 127th Street in Yellowhead. This work is, the closure of 142nd Street and Stony Plain Road is scheduled for July 1st. Can we not figure out, based on all of the diversion roads we've built in the past, how to build a diversion road if the land was available? And like that to me is a geometry question we can answer in a week.
It's something we could look at, Councillor Cartmel, keeping in mind that the infrastructure on the south half of Stony Plain Road at 142 is complete already. So we would have to look at what does that mean, and do we have the space and the geometry to make the turns and do the diversions?
at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. We'll go to Councillor Knack again, second round.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to close the loop here on 140. I guess if I say yes, go ahead. And frankly, I think we have no choice because of the closure of the Wellington Bridge. I'm just going to be very blunt. I think that negates any other. What I want to know is, are we committing to finding a path to provide access at 142nd, similar to the 149th Street? I don't want to say yes, and then 2 weeks later, after you've done all this work, say, well, no, we're going to stick with the original plan with no access. Because then I don't get a chance to then say no, essentially. So if I'm saying yes today, can I say yes with the expectation that you work with the folks at West Block, just like you're working with the folks at 149, to ensure they have an access?
So Councillor Knack, I'll say yes to providing some degree of access to some parking. I have to put that caveat around the detour road is much more complex, in all due respect to Councillor Carmel, but again, we can work on costing it out and doing that and providing a memo to that effect, but in terms of committing to doing that as part of the accelerated plan, it would compromise the duration, I believe, if that was the case.
I guess so. Sorry, that's a lot. Forgive me for asking. I'm going to ask this in a very, very direct way. I don't care which option, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or an option 4 or option 5. But if I say yes, receive for information, which means proceed with this, you are committing to finding a option, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that will provide some level of access. It could be option 2, which provides that access. It could be something else that you work together on. I'm saying yes, you're saying yes, and we're going to do this. We just don't know which version yet.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I want. Thank you. Sorry to be very direct. I wanted to make sure we had that on the record, because I hear folks at both in the Switzer, and I heard the folks at West Block, and I want to make sure we're not leaving them in an uncertain place. And to them, I've heard their commitment to work with you to figure out the way to make that whatever option work. So I just wanted to make that clear. I think Councillor Stevenson already asked about how do we hold them to timelines. Just closing the loop on Councillor Rice's question. I don't know if this is, Council already put forward a motion and defeated a motion to do a pilot of some type of financial compensation for businesses along Stony Plain Road. So at this point, and this might be to the clerks, since that has been done within the last year, any decision to reevaluate some type of financial compensation would have to come from somebody on the opposing side, correct? I think that's to the clerks.
Yeah, Councillor Knack, I know that was directed to the clerks, but I believe your understanding is correct on that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we had that debate. Council, a majority of council decided otherwise, and so I will never oppose to having that conversation, but I'll just say it out loud that if that needs to happen, it needs to come from somebody who voted on the opposing side to that. So, okay, after that, those are all my questions. I'll move for receipt of information at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knack. I'd like to welcome another class here today, also from Good Shepherd School in grade 6 with teacher senior here. Teacher senior, give a wave. And also we have 2 classes here. So the Good Shepherd School is at Ward Sipiwinawak, which Councillor Hamilton is your counselor, who's I think watching from the above screen today. We also are welcoming the grade 6 class from Crawford Plains today, with teacher Brenton guiding today. So Crawford Plains School is in Ward Smomatapi, which Councillor Joanne Wright is your city councillor, so throw a wave over there. So I'll ask all of my council colleagues to give them a round of a hand and welcome all of the students to City Hall. So we're just working through an item about LRT construction and road closures and discussions about how do we build things in the city while making sure that people can still access their homes and businesses and services that they need. So I know you're taking notes, and I know it'll be very interesting for you. So next on the board was Mayor Sohi.
Nice to see you, kids. I look at the accelerated timelines. They're very tight. What I want to know is if those timelines are not met, who will be held accountable?
Mayor Sohi, the contractor will, through this amended sort of traffic requirement provision, we would set in place with them.
So if those timelines are not met, you'll build some penalties, right?
Yes.
But penalties protect city's interest. They don't necessarily protect businesses. And they don't necessarily protect the commuters who are impacted and communities who are impacted. As elected representative of them, I want to know who I can hold accountable for not meeting those timelines on behalf of the community.
Mayor Sohi, yeah, I understand exactly your question, and as the team has reinforced, before we enter in, if we proceed on this, we will be looking at specifically within the contract changes or amendments, what those accountabilities will be. As the team's talked about, we'll look at a progression, seeing how they perform on that acceleration, and we will make sure that we have elements in there. And you're right, it'll be to the contract agreement we can, to the phase and the scope of the construction we're doing. And like any other construction project, the associated impacts come with business impact and resident delay and impacts. And that is part of the risk profile of this acceleration plan you see before you today.
Okay. So how will you keep council appraised? Will there be weekly memos coming to us on updates, right? So that we have a kind of direct insight into how things are going instead of being surprised a few days before.
Yeah, Mayor Sohi, if there's a desire for council to receive weekly updates, and we'll be pleased to provide those.
Okay. And I'm also looking at the overview of the public communications plan, and majority of the engagement with public doesn't start till March. And that doesn't give me much confidence. Like if committee gives approval today, you don't need another approvals, right? You don't need council approval.
No, you're actually, if you receive this report for information today, we will be proceeding with the plan you see in the report.
But why would you not be starting that communication plan tomorrow? It takes time for people to get used to and message to sink in. And this is going to be a major disruption for businesses and communities impacted. Yes, there's a benefit at the end because accelerated timelines and construction is completed faster, but there's going to be major disruption. So why would you not over-communicate this as much as possible and start tomorrow?
I would say we're hearing exactly from all of you today the expectation around that, and part of our plan will be looking at exactly those things if we proceed today, as the report says.
Yeah, I know you have to wait for committee's approval, so you couldn't communicate this before, but so far I have seen more communications on this from Councillor Knack than from city, right?
Understood.
Right, so I think it's important that we communicate that as much as possible. How are we going to mitigate the impact on downtown of this construction, broader downtown? Because, downtown is, the things are changing. There's positive change happening. There's excitement. More people, like last summer downtown was bustling with people. But if you're going to make it difficult for people to come downtown, because we deliberately do it, but this accelerated plan will make it difficult for people to come downtown. How are we going to mitigate that?
Yeah, understood. There'll be a report coming to council on February 25th that looks at the impacts of all of our construction projects. That was a motion that you made, and not just the that, but quarterly updates on that, and I'm hearing a very similar thing as it relates to this project. So the analysis that was done more globally of all the projects, not just Valley Line West, was looking at those impacts and how do we make sure that we're not exceeding those, any delays that really do shut it down completely. And we've adjusted some of our project scope and timing as part of that intent in and out of the downtown. And you'll have more of that detail when that report comes forward as well.
Okay, thanks. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I do have similar question as Mayor. So he asked in terms of all the accountability piece and impact piece. So if today we received as information, but I heard from your answer, you're going to make some like amendments in the contract agreement. So those contract agreements will come to council for approval, right?
Councillor Rice, no, we would make those amendments under our authority as contract administrators.
So we do, council will not approve any of this contract amendments, contract agreement amendments.
That was our intent and plan. That's correct.
So if that is the case, and for the contract agreement amendments, I know you mentioned you're going to talk about some like impact. You're going to talk about some financial impact as well. So then my question to administration is, from today's discussion as one example, I know word councillor and mentioned about financial compensation. So I would look at this from like broader angle and for across the entire city for the major construction project impact the business. So it's not more about financial compensation, it's about more financial impact on the business. Is there anything could be built into the contract agreement even at the beginning, or do you need a specific separate policy and to direct that work?
Councillor Rice, our agreement currently requires, as do most of our construction contracts, they require our contractors to maintain access to businesses at all times, and that won't change with this plan that we're proposing this year.
But that does not reflect how we compensate the financial impact on those businesses. But that did not reflect that.
I think,
so for this situation.
Councillor Rice, I think the context Councillor Knack gave around a review from council about whether we should enter into that and that motion was defeated comes back to how that was answered that way.
I know this is my concern because every time you need the word councillor and broad motion to council and for decision on the specific, is there any way we could build a separate policy and for any major construction when they started, and then to build that into the agreement and for certain financial impact on the business and how those agreements reflect those impacts. And I think that would be the more efficient and effective way instead of every year we have to bring that and to council to repeatedly debate and discuss. Is there any way, and from your perspective?
In terms of the immediacy of what we're doing with this project, I don't think that would be possible. And as I mentioned before, there was a motion brought forward before to that very thing that was defeated by council. So you'd have to look at that governance and how that could be brought back and when. So
I have to repeat this again, and that is my concern. And then so my focus right now, I try to find the more effective way and how to resolve this, how to address the concern we heard, and also the concern over and over. I saw Councillor Principe hands up. Sorry, Miss Mayor, Mr. Chair, I saw the Principe. Councillor Prince, hands up. So, okay, so I think I have to repeat this question because my goal is not to say every time the word councillor brings those type of motion come to the council, and then council repeatedly debate every year. Is there any way and we could address those type of concerns and from the business who are negatively impacted by the construction project and from policy decision making perspective?
Councillor Rice, I think that when this was brought up before, it wasn't specific. It's not specific to a ward or a project in a ward. It was a broader policy conversation that was brought forward, responded to, and council made a decision at that time.
Okay, I'm sorry, my time is out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Councillor Cartmel was talking about delaying Jasper Avenue and that. If a motion was made to request that analysis be done, that would delay any decisions being made on this item, correct?
Not
no?
directly.
No?
If this one's received for information, we will proceed within the context and scope of what we're brought here for you for this project. I would flag with the Jasper Avenue project, part of the reason why we have the timing we do is a federal government grant that has to be completed on time, and part of our timing of that project is specifically related to being able to ensure that we maintain those funds. So there's more implications than just a delay in its own. It has implications to that specifically.
Okay, and that's the contracts and stuff that you had mentioned earlier, I think,
Correct.
when you responded. Okay. And then, like, we're going to also be getting a report at City Council at the end of the month, right, about transportation projects.
That's correct. February 25th, that'll be before. This project, as well as all others happening in 2025, are within the scope and part of that report and how they influence each other for the construction overall.
Okay. Can we have that information sooner? No.
I believe you will have it in a few days on the normal publishing. It's just the timing of this and how we needed to make sure we had as much time didn't quite work out, but it is there.
Okay.
And it does look globally at those impacts of all the projects together happening.
Okay, perfect. That's all I have then. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson, is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you flagging the federal grant implication of Jasper Avenue. I am wondering though, so I want to be crystal clear, the closure of 124th Street and Stony Plain Road will not start, Wellington Bridge will not start until that intersection is reopened. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So I'm wondering, so I have zero appetite to delay Jasper Ave, but recognizing that Wellington Bridge, does it make sense, would it be possible to move Jasper Ave to align with when the Wellington Bridge work starts? So that would be potentially the 8 weeks where 124th Street is closed?
I would say, Councillor, we can always take away and look. I would caution, though, that the scale and the type of work and maintaining lanes on Jasper Avenue all necessitate 3 construction seasons to complete it and meet those requirements. So
Yeah.
I would be apprehensive to commit that for those very reasons.
Yeah, and that's fair. And maybe even, if you are able to take that back, and even if we reduce that overlap by a week, that reduces some time frame of pressure. But I share your desire to see Jasper Ave move forward. I mean, and I think in terms of the critical nature of the work, I mean, there are essentially no curbs there anymore. It is run to ruin in a very real way, and I think delaying has real safety implications.
Yeah, and when you look at even the utility move requirements and all of that, it would be very problematic to try and, really, if you remember Wellington, we're proposing in Q4, it's more winterized work, and that really takes you away from a construction season on Jasper, so it really is not too feasible. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. But, but thinking of maybe some other compensations, when we spoke earlier, I was asking about the opportunity to potentially expand park and ride opportunities at South Campus Station. So providing folks coming from my colleagues' wards to bypass the road network and be able to park at South Campus and take a train downtown. Is that something that we're able to explore further?
Councillor Stevenson, I think it's something that we could look at with our colleagues in ETS, but when we did model the impacts of these projects as well as the other projects that you'll see on February 25th, our road network still continues to function.
Yeah, and I think, I think just providing people with some sort of pressure relief, that they know that they do have an option, I think can be helpful too, just in terms of managing some of the.
We can take that away, and we have been very active with transit, of course, along the whole way of not just this project, but the 2025 project. So we're always interacting with them and looking at how we accommodate through all those mechanisms. Great.
Thank you so much. Also just wanted to confirm again, both the 121st Street and the 116th Street intersections will be at full capacity during the 124th Street closure?
Yes, they will be.
Okay, great. Just an idea, not to go into now, but would it be possible to consider, when we're looking at structuring that contract, if there are delays and there are, financial incentives / penalties, could any of that revenue that the city may collect for additional delays be used as a fund to support impacted businesses?
From a direct compensation perspective, and I should really have law commenting on this right now, no. We do a lot of work, as the teams have echoed in the past, around that access, accommodation, and trying to support in other ways within that, what we can do within our realm and in our contracts.
Okay, and then just a very last question. I think it's wonderful that, we have this opportunity to accelerate construction, and there doesn't seem to be a budget implication. We're not talking about additional costs. So just wondering, what does this tell us or make us think about for future construction projects? Are we maybe looking at this type of approach in other scenarios?
Yeah, and thank you for the question. And I know I was going to jump in a few times. This plan, this approach that you see here before you today is very aggressive. Generally, when we're taking on projects, we're looking at maintaining flow wherever we can, absolutely through your morning and afternoon peak times. And it's always about, I know the team has said it's about that balance, but this is going beyond where we would usually, the level of impact. And it's that trade-off of the efficiency of the time, the de-risking that this team has talked about. So this goes beyond the level of traffic restriction that we would generally do. For this specific example, with the context that you have before you, we are generally trying to balance better, maintain traffic flow for commuters, emergency services, for business access. So we always take that pragmatic and balanced approach, and this is pushing beyond that normal balance of a project with intent and purpose.
And, I think it does raise the question of, do we have that balance right? Like, I think this will be an interesting experiment.
Sorry, we're over time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Cardinal.
Great, thank you. Just a few more questions. So in attachment 1, there's descriptions of each of the intersections and dates put to those closures. So my question is, are these hard and fast dates, or does this imply a sequence? So for instance, will the 142nd Street intersection remain fully open until the 149th Street work is complete? Or are we going to get an overlap where both intersections are closed at the same time?
Councillor Cartmel, it's primarily sequence, but I understand your question. We certainly wouldn't authorize MIP to enter into an intersection that was dependent on the other intersection being completed. So I think we're very intentional that, we look at those overlapping potentials or what the consequences might be. So it is primarily a range of months that these intersections would be started. They may not all start on April 15th, for example, but there will be, the intent is to start and finish them within that window. Some may be finished a bit early or later, depending on.
So high level, yes, for those key intersections.
It needs to be a sequence, because, I still think that there should be a motion made here to examine the delay of Jasper Avenue. I appreciate the comments, the funding and all of that, but if we consider compressing that construction period to 2 years by closing the whole road and doing some of the things, like being aggressive like we are on this sequence, then we can do it all. I think we need to look at the options. But right now, without that consideration, the only way to get from south of Stony Plain Road to downtown realistically is 107th Ave. And 156th Street you can't use because there's LRT construction. 149th or 142nd is going to be closed. If they're all closed, there is no way to get from one side to the other. And we just cannot have that. So is it a sequence or is it a schedule?
I guess it's both. I think your concern is we would not have them start work at 149 unless 142 Street was completely open. We would want to have both 142 and 156th Street finished before 149th Street gets open. They're very intentional, and they're sequenced or scheduled that way to avoid multiple streets, north-south streets being impacted. We want to make sure that that alternate is available and available at full capacity.
Yeah, but
And
once bitten, twice shy.
Right.
Right? And if we get a whole series of thunderstorms that delays the work 3 or 4 weeks, and someone panics and closes 142nd Street before 149th is done, then because we want to get it all done in this season, like you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and like I said,
Yeah.
we're very intentional at the end of each phase. So we may have parts of phase 2 work that eats into phase 3 timing, and then we would make a decision, can you finish that phase 3 intersection in the balance of the year? If not, they may not be able to proceed in the balance of the year. We
part of
are
what
being
we're
very
looking at.
intentional there.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And I would say to your other questions around other projects, remember February 25th will show the context of all of that. So there'll be an opportunity to have that discussion with all the teams here to talk about those influences of all the
Right,
projects
fair enough,
too.
right.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask about the Wellington Bridge just quickly. If one of the approaches taken on the Valley Line crossing at White Mud was to precast that bridge and lift it into place. Can we examine some of those alternatives for the Wellington Bridge? You know, doing it in halves, that kind of a thing, so that we can maintain, you know, even one lane each way more of the time, whenever the time may be.
Yeah, I think I have Jason here who's more involved in the details. I can have him jump in and give you an answer to that. There's been
I
some work.
really just wanted, you know, because it's not part of this conversation today, but for the conversation in a couple of weeks, if we can be ready to talk about that?
Yeah, we have looked at a number of acceleration options and we can talk about that then.
Yeah, okay. I had one more. When these intersections close, and I'm thinking particularly of 149th Street, you know, if 149th Street is closed, there needs to be a barricade some point east of that for westbound traffic, because they can't dead end in that intersection. So what is the actual barricade plan that diverts traffic off of Stony Plain Road? Or is it effectively the road is closed at 142nd because the intersection's closed at 149th? Do you know you see what I mean?
I'd have to bring up the intersection drawings to show, but both 149 and 142 are what were called partial closures. So east-west traffic on Stony Plain Road would be open, as would any turns to go south on those roads. There would be no closures or no barriers to prevent east-west traffic. It's only that traffic that wants to go directly north-south on either 142 and 149th Street that we'd be impacted.
Yeah, it's more 156, I guess.
Yes, 156 is a bit more complicated, you're right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Knack.
No further questions. I'll move receipt of information.
Okay, thank you. Clerk, we have receipt of information on the floor. No second required because we're a committee. Anything further, Councilor Knack?
No, I'll speak to it at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Sohi.
Thank you. Just one question remaining, or just a suggestion, understanding the impact is going to be considerable for the long-term gain and shortening the overall construction time. Would you be able to, I think that would require quite a bit timely response to inquiries from businesses, inquiries from the communities, inquiries from council, other stakeholders, right? Are you putting together some sort of kind of a rapid response team, right? That will get on right away instead of, because this is, we haven't had, maybe let me ask this question first. We haven't done this before. This is the first time we are doing this kind of accelerated construction completion where we are closing intersections entirely? Have we done this kind of work before?
Mayor, sorry, very few times in my career with the city. The last time would be like major bridge closures that would have,
Right,
you know,
right.
similar impacts to replace bridges. So that this is of that magnitude.
Right. So which means that we need to have our ducks in order, all hands on deck kind of approach, where communications, responding to people's inquiries, businesses. So are you planning to put together some sort of team within your various departments that is solely focused on this and say, anything comes up, they're ready to react?
So Mayor, so yes, we have already the bones or the basis of that team that deals with inquiries related to Valley Line, but we will beef up where necessary to focus on these, potential inquiries and concerns for these intersections.
So that can, a team that can respond quickly to BIA concerns or, West Block concerns, downtown concerns, like usually it takes number of weeks for us to kind of, I don't know, like again, I'm not making, please, every situation different, but in normal circumstances, it's okay to wait a week for a response. But this is not going to be normal circumstances. So that's why I'm suggesting that we put something together that has a strict timelines to follow, that we are responding maybe same day, right, to some of those concerns.
We will take that message back and work through that.
And in the other report coming, that was on the premise of, for all capital projects, quarterly updates for this particular project, even to all of you, to council, if you would like more frequent updates of status, given where the aggressive schedule, we're happy to accommodate that as well.
I know, I look forward to that conversation at our next council, but I think that's more broad and citywide. And those are kind of, we managing those construction sites in a normal way that we would manage. But this accelerated approach is, I think we need to be very, very proactive in communications. Otherwise,
Understood.
like if this is successful, it could be a template for other other situations.
Seeing the trade-offs and how we do, very much so. Well, we're going to learn a lot through this, as you said, specifically.
Yeah, it could fail, which could be very harmful many ways. If it's successful, it could be a template. So I just want to
I would say
emphasize
there's
that.
risk in everything, and we have been thoughtful before we brought this plan to you in terms of that for sure. Or we wouldn't have this before you unless we were confident enough that this is something we really believe can happen with the risks we've provided you today.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Sohi. If I may jump on the board here, so I just want to, since we have receipt of information on the floor, I just want to ask administration, I've been trying to take a couple of notes here today. What commitments have been made? I heard commitments about scheduling. I heard commitments about communications. I heard commitments about we won't do 2 until we're done 1. We won't do 3 until we're done 2. Can you help sum for us before we get into debate what you've heard?
Councillor Jans, just summarizing the notes that I have, we've got lots of notes here today. Definitely, right out of the gates is understanding 149. We've got some access issues with some businesses there. 142, working with the team at Quintero and West Block to get them some access in there. So those are immediate takeaways. Enhanced communication starting immediately will be the next one for us, as well as and it won't be as visible to the public, but immediately start working with MIP to start putting the details together on traffic accommodation planning and things like that, so we can communicate those out as soon as we have the information available and really have our team and Marigold's team ramp up to start executing this plan.
Okay. The only other one I would add that we haven't really talked about today is I know that construction has been a major logjam for some of our crosstown transit routes. I think about the number 4 and some of the others, so I don't know if we'll have to look at any summertime diversions. I know we changed service schedules anyway, so there might be a natural harmony point here to move some routes, but I know many times I've sat in the number 2 at the 142nd intersection there, so okay, that's all I have. I know Councillor Knack, you moved receipt of information, and I know you wanted to speak to it. Does anybody else want to speak to receipt of information? Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just want to share my appreciation with staff and our construction partners for coming up with this plan. It's certainly not without its trade-offs, but on balance, I think it offers good value and will help relieve and alleviate some of the pressures that this major construction project is having. I really appreciate the commitment I heard today to work with our construction partners to create an 8-hour quiet buffer each night to provide residents with some relief, and also some really robust mechanisms in place to ensure that there are strong financial incentives to keep these closures on their planned timeline. I also really appreciate the detailed work the teams are doing to coordinate between these multiple critical infrastructure projects that are coming our way, and look forward to that further conversation later this month. But just to echo some of the comments, I really do think this could be, comments from the mayor. I really do think this could be a great learning opportunity. I think, we'll see how it plays out, but I think this could be the start of revisiting our level of comfort with more intensive approaches to construction. We can't control our weather, but we could change how construction season plays out each year in Edmonton. So thank you again for the work. I think it's exciting not only for this project, but for projects ahead as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carmel.
Yeah, thank you. It should be noted that we asked for this. So, you're bringing what we asked for. So I mean, it's, there's a bit of an undertone of criticism at times. And I think the one point to be taken out of that is that, we get more with collaboration and conversation and discussion of the options and opening the book, so to speak, to what others might be able to offer. Land access for free, cuts through parking lots, these kinds of things that we might not normally in the course of trying to build roadways think about. But when we're really caught between two very difficult places: the slow pace so far of construction and wanting to get it done, and the ever greater impacts on the people that are in those spaces, including the residents, by the way, whom we have not heard a lot from today. So appreciate we asked for it. Appreciate we brought it back. Already some learnings to offer. I would be remiss if I didn't say that, of the options in and around West Block, my strong preference would be for the diversion road around, because I think that, notwithstanding commitments around sequencing and other potentials around that is the more reliable solution that at least will maintain some connectivity between the south and the north. And I realize it's a bit more complicated, but I don't think it's all that complicated. We have the pledge from at least one landowner on these spaces to help make it work. I think there's a solution set there. So again, appreciate all of the information in the dialogue today and look forward to the conversation in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to start by thanking Councillor Knack for extensive engagement that he undertook over the last number of months. I would say duration of the entire project, duration of this project, but ramping up that engagement over the last number of months and being very proactive in that communication. So really want to appreciate that kind of engagement can help us find some solutions as well, right? So appreciate that effort. I'm going to support this, but I also want to make sure that we are putting together an approach that will lead to a success on this, right? And it's important that we lead to a success on this, because there will be a lot of impact on businesses, there will be a lot of impact on communities, the way people move around in our city, particularly in those neighborhoods, whether you're commuting by car, whether you're on the bus, whether you're riding your bike or you're walking. And we need to find a way to accommodate those as much as possible for this to be successful. And other part is raised earlier is communications. If we are not able to communicate why are we doing this and what the benefits are going to be to the communities, and that we're asking them to go through a lot of short-term pain, which is beyond a normal project. with the hope that there'll be a reduction in construction time by half. And they need to see that benefit. They need to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And we need to communicate that as effectively and as often as we can to get their buy-in and make them help them understand why this is being done. And I'm hoping again, once again, I want to highlight this, that I hope that next time we're having this conversation, we are not seeing as much frustration from BIA and other businesses, right? And I want to highlight that. I know our administration works really, really hard. I understand that Marigold also works really hard on this, and sometimes P3 projects are very complex in a way, right? So maybe it's hard to coordinate sometimes, but I think we need to learn from some of the past things and move forward on it in a more collaborative way. But I think communication is going to be key for this success. So, wish you all the best, right? And we will be getting a lot of calls, obviously, and because people will be frustrated. But I hope that we can communicate to them that frustration is short-term and there's a long-term benefit to that. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. Councillor Knack to close.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Thanks, everyone, for indulging this discussion today. Just as maybe a good starting point, I would say the conversation before us today is not about short-term pain for preventing long-term pain. We've already had long-term pain. The businesses around Stony Plain Road have been dealing with a lot, and this isn't the meeting to rehash a lot of that, other than to say, the bridge work has been great. The work around West Edmonton Mall has been excellent. The work by the Henday has been wonderful. And for whatever reason, the roads have not been nearly up to the standard in terms of timelines and completing work. Part of why I made this motion is, and I've talked about this a few times, I remember traveling on a Sunday afternoon in late September that was 20 degrees and sunny. And I rode my bike along the entirety of the route all the way up through Glenora, and there was no work happening on one of the last, warm, sunny days. And at the same time, in the neighboring community of Grosvenor, which is attached to this, there were crews out there doing microsurfacing. They were doing work, but it was a different project. That left me really frustrated as someone that's been, pretty big champion of this project overall. So wanted to make this motion to say, how do we end the long-term pain sooner? And that's the whole intent behind this. We've got to end the long-term pain sooner. I'm comfortable with what I've heard today, and Councillor Jans summarized it in his question. I'm going to summarize it one more time. I've heard the commitments and the requests from Stony Plain Road BIA are agreed to. I've heard the requests from the businesses at 149th and 142nd being agreed to. We'll figure out what exactly that looks like. So, but I'm not leaving here today questioning if it's going to happen. The only question is how it will happen. So thank you. I want to thank administration. I really did appreciate the report. I thought it was a very thorough report. Really helped me feel comfortable about this overall. And I think it is actually a testament that in terms of all of the people that could have been speaking today, we didn't have a ton of people speaking today. And I actually think it's because this report was thorough. When there was a question earlier today about engagement with residents, I'll just say I feel like I've checked that box for a while now, and it's part of, again, what sparked this motion. So thanks to administration for doing that work. Thanks for letting us be a little firm in our questions today and a little rough on that, because we wanted to make sure we're addressing some very particular needs. But let's get it done. Let's move on. Let's get that road work done, because we just want to be riding this thing. And my challenge to Marigold is to, please make sure. I saw great progress in 2024 outside of a handful of those times, including the example I referenced. But I saw a lot more progress on the roads in 2024 than I did in 2022 and 2023. So let's see that multiplied instead of the first 2 years, which was, if I'm just being very blunt, it was disappointing. So hopefully we can see better. I think we are seeing better, and I think this will get us where we need to go. So let's get moving, get the work started, get it done as per the schedule, as per that new schedule, and I think that'll be better for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Please vote.
That's right. I have to vote verbally. I'm a yes.
I'm a yes as well.
Thank you, Councillor Knack and Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you to the speakers, thank you to administration, and to be continued. Response to councillor inquiries, none. Private reports, done. Motion pending. I have a motion, so I guess Councillor Wright, would you take the chair, please?
I have,
All right, it's at committee. Okay, well then I will introduce, if you'll indulge me quickly, I'll move my own motion here. Clerk, are you able to put it up on the screen? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Yes, we're getting that up for you now.
Awesome, thank you. So this, I know we've talked about verbally, but the notice of motion is that administration undertake an analysis of the design of row housing permitted in the RS zone as a part of the one-year review of the zoning bylaw, recommended future work to improve design outcomes. Very quickly, by way of introduction, and I believe the due date was, Clerk, could you clarify?
So the plan for the one-year review of the zoning bylaw is currently scheduled for the June 3rd, 2025 Urban Planning Committee meeting. Would you like this work to be incorporated into that report, or would you like a standalone report?
I would see it as incorporated into that report, because there might be other holistic factors we need to look at here.
Okay.
Yeah, so very, very quickly, the intent of this is to take a look at the different kinds of, we've seen some excellent examples of RS going in, and we've seen some others that I think leave more to be desired. So this is designed to create an opportunity to look at this. I would see engagement with industry, engagement with the city architect, engagement with communities, and no, this is the debate. If committee votes on it today, then it would go for it as part of RS. Clerk, am I correct there?
Yes, notice for this was given at the February 3rd, 2025 City
Okay,
Council
yeah, no worries.
public hearing.
So engagement with many stakeholders and or different opportunities, and this would come forward as part of the one-year review. So administration had signaled to me that they thought this is something that was reasonable to undertake and also necessary to undertake as well. So happy to take any questions. Hearing none. Any debate? Hearing none, I have nothing to close. Please call the vote.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes as well.
Thank you. We're just missing one vote. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried unanimously. Notice is a motion, and motions without customary notice. I'm not aware of any. We are adjourned.